Thank you everyone for being here today for FCI Live for our final of 3 weeks for our winter edition. We will be back and doing this in September in the fall again. And this week we are featuring a couple of peer stories, and we're very excited to have with us today the South Philly Food Co-op, who after organizing for 10 years opened their doors 2 days before Christmas.
Whoa!
It's quite a story. And I'm going to turn it over. Their general manager made time to join us today, Lori Burge, who has been the general manager of another startup as well. Hopefully she'll share a little of her history around that and to let us know more about South Philly and how it's been going since they got open. They are the first and so far only startup food co-op to open during the pandemic. So they've had a very unique ride. And with that, thanks so much to Lori for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Burge. I'm the general manager at South Philly Food Co-op. Before I joined South Philly Food Co-op, I was doing some work here with Keystone Development Center, doing cooperative business development. Prior to that, I was working with New Orleans Food Co-op, and I opened and managed New Orleans Food Co-op for many years. And before that, I got my initial start at People's Food Co-op in Portland, Oregon, one of the food co-ops that had started in 1970. So I've seen the long established co-ops, and I've seen the startups, and I'm here with the art. I didn't realize we were the only food co-op. I've been in my tunnel vision to open during the pandemic. So I feel extra proud of us right now for, what we've accomplished. It has definitely been a wild ride. I have a little presentation that I could pop up if that makes sense. I'm trying to figure out how to do that because usually somebody else is dealing with the Zoom thing. I have more, what do I do?
You should be able, so I'm gonna make you the co-host so that makes it even easier. There should be something at the bottom of the screen that's green that says share screen.
Let me see. Let me make it a little bigger. Maybe I just, there we go. Great.
Click on that.
I minimized my screen. So, okay, here we go. Great. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay, so that's our, so you can visit our website, southphillyfood.coop. We're open on Juniper Street. We're in South Philadelphia, right in the heart of South Philly, right off of Broad Street, which is a kind of a major street that runs through the city. And, that's where we have the subway and a lot of buses run up and down the street there. So we're right here in a very urban center. So it's a very tight footprint here. Our store is 2,333 square feet of retail. The overall square footage is 3,333 square feet. So our offices are really tiny. I'm in our little office right now, which people sometimes say, oh, well, that's a hallway. We have been, working on this project for quite some time. I'm going to talk a little bit about us and our history. So just like all of you, we are a grocery store. We're community owned. We are open to the public. We support our local farmers and producers, and we see ourselves as a hub, for our community. Our mission is using food as a force for good at our tables in our community and for our planet. And that's what really drove me to South Philly Food Co-op, is I really love the mission of our cooperative. So I find it very inspiring, and the commitment and the way in which we live those values. So here's a little bit about our history. Way back in April 2010, we held our first organizing meeting. It was, so the history goes that it had something to do with a garlic press from Weaver's Way Co-op. We're so fortunate here to have a long history of co-ops and food co-ops in the Philadelphia area. Our first co-op in this area was formed by Benjamin Franklin, so we can go, way back, rooted in co-op history. But just our own co-op started in April 2010 with the initial organizing meeting, much like many of your food co-ops did. So we did all the potlucks and all of the community meetings in the churches and the community centers and all of that good stuff, working really hard to get the people together and really organize. So I like what you were saying about, it's organizing, because it really is networking and organizing in those initial stages, talking to people about this shared vision and building a shared vision. And so it started out with a handful of folks, and over time it grew. By April 2011, we had incorporated as a nonprofit cooperative corporation, which is under the statutes that we have here in Pennsylvania. And then we launched our membership drive in May of that year, 2011, and started bringing in our first member owners and elected our first board of directors. We have general membership meetings. Up until recently, they were in May and October of each year. We've now moved to an annual membership meeting structure just within this last October. So we were meeting as a whole group of member owners, or as many folks as we could get to come together, once a year, twice a year. And we also had a series of, different kind of working group committees, of course, like most of our stores have. Finance, the site committee, a group that was working on the feasibility study, which was the predecessor to that site committee, marketing and outreach, all of the different working groups, to get folks working on specific task areas under the direction of our board of directors. In April 2012, we did our feasibility study. By May, that same year, 2012, we had 250 owners, and we launched our real estate committee. That real estate committee did a lot of work. They went out and looked at over 100 sites, trying to find the right space for our store, which is not easy in such an urban environment. And in the end, some of the recommendations, that are made for food co-ops, we don't really have in our specific site. For example, we don't have a parking lot where, we're on a street that doesn't have specific parking just for us, and our square footage is rather small. But, for our neighborhood, we did an assessment within our area as well to take a look at the specific sites that we were looking at and attempting to find something that our board felt would work for our cooperative and our unique community. And it's definitely, so we'll talk a little bit more later about like kind of how that all, panned out. So in May 2012, that's when we launched our real estate committee. They really, got into thinking about site search. What were we looking in a site over that next year? April 2013, by then we had 400 member owners, and they launched the site search. That's when they really got out there pounding the pavement, looking at actual spaces. They completed the market study and prepared the business plan. This is all the board and, of course, amazing group of volunteers working to make this happen well before I was even involved. I was in New Orleans at that time. And then in May 2014, we reached 600 member owners and, continued slogging along to reach that 1,000, member owner goal. To sign our lease by October 2016, we did sign our lease for the space that we have here at 2031 Juniper. So it took us several years to get through that process of building the member ownership base that we needed to support the store and to find a site that our board felt was going to work for us. So that was quite some time. By March 2017, that's when we hired a capital campaign manager and really launched our member loan campaign. So our member loan campaign, which started in 2017, we had one person that was working for us, and then we hired a different person to complete the process. So we had two different capital campaign managers in that time. They were working to raise owner loans and build our member ownership base. So the member owner loans were $1,000, and there were 3 and 4% interest, or 0% interest. 0, 2, and 4% interest, and the terms were 6 to 10 years. So we let the member owners select the amount that they wanted to invest in the owner loan and the term. So basically, we raised $700,000 towards store opening, and then we launched phase 1 of our construction, which those were things like pouring the cement, for the space. One side note is to make sure that you've got all of your refrigeration equipment plans, and that you know where that's going to go, so you know where the drains are supposed to go. We did not do that, and we had to go back and correct it later. So at a cost, unfortunately. So be sure to think about those things before you start doing things like pouring cement. And started framing in the space and working towards making that happen. Our landlord was supposed to be carrying a portion of that work under a landlord work letter, and then we had certain tenant improvements that we were going to endeavor. And so there were some definite challenges, between like what the landlord was supposed to be doing and what we were doing. And it caused some delays. We weren't seeing enough motion on his part. And then we had some staging issues. And I think, in the end, basically what we're going to find out, as we kind of go through this timeline, is we ended up taking over the construction because it wasn't working the way that it was laid out. The person who owns our building doesn't really do commercial sites and isn't like a big real estate guy. He didn't really have a substantial general contractor that really knows grocery. And so that caused a lot of challenges in timeline and staging, even just in just getting the work done.
We've already got a couple questions, so can I pause you for a sec?
Yes,
Sorry. So there's a question like, did you actually pay rent for the 4 years between signing the lease and opening? How was that managed?
Well, so we actually did not pay rent for the first couple of years. We did begin paying rent in, I believe it was 2018. That's when we actually did start, 2018 started paying rent. Now, technically, we should not have started paying rent. And so we're actually trying to go back now and figure out why and how that happened. So there are definitely some issues around that. It in my mind was not clearly demarcated, like what was the actual threshold of when we were to start paying rent. So I think that I would just flag that as something to pay really good attention to. So like in the past, like in New Orleans, we did not pay rent until we were actually to a stage where we were really just right about to open. And that's what I've seen in the past and heard of in the past with more of these real estate deals where you're, signing a long-term lease. But for whatever reason, we began paying, rent earlier on than I think was really ideal for us financially. So that did, and you will hear, did pose some, challenges for us kind of as we've kind of moved along through this process, especially because of delays caused by COVID. So
I bet you're going to get to these questions later, so I'm just going to put them out there. And if you're like, I'm getting to those, then you can just let me know. There was a question about, did you have a construction project manager or did it go straight from the board to the GM? And a question about, you said you raised 700,000 out of 1.04 million, and I'm betting that's coming later in the story. But
yes. So yes, we did have a construction project manager, Watchdog Construction, and they were to manage both the identification of our general contractor and supporting our general contractor, in negotiations between our GC and the food co-op, and also they were our owner's reps, so they also represented us with our landlord as well in certain aspects, and then that they worked with what was our facilities committee at the time. So the facilities committee would meet bi-weekly and review certain things related to the construction and relations with the landlord. So yes, so we did have a construction project manager, and I guess we'll talk a little bit more about kind of how that all flowed out. So we hit our 1,000 member owners October 2018, which was fabulous, very exciting. By March 2019, we hit 1,100 member owners. By then, April 2019, we raised 1.04 million towards our store opening. At that point, we hit, where we really needed to be to have our groundbreaking celebration. And that's when the co-op board hired me. They had done a search, to make sure that they were looking for general managers, took on a number of applications, did the whole process, including engaging like some external expertise in the process as well. And then brought me on, and my hire was announced at the groundbreaking celebration. So that's when we were supposed to start phase 2 of our construction. And phase 2 really was the majority of the construction. There was a certain amount of framing in and some basics that were kind of meant to happen to kind of keep things moving along while they were working towards that larger $1.04 million goal. Then at that point, we hit another wall. So it was in the spring/summer 2019, after I was hired, that we were reviewing the final construction contract with our general contractor. At that time, it was realized that certain things had changed. Well, it had been quite some time since we got our initial estimate, probably longer than it should have been, since we would between when we originally got it from when we looked at it again. We were getting ready to finalize our loan and begin that second phase of construction. That's when we were getting our final construction budget. Well, the cost of construction went up. It was 1.04 million, and the cost went up to 1.26 million. So that is a substantial increase in money. And that just stopped us, in our tracks, because you can't start construction with that large of a capital gap without figuring out what went wrong and how you got there, and then raise a lot more money. And of course, we didn't even have a loan yet from Reinvestment Fund, which is our primary lender. And so we had to really update our pro forma and everything, our sources and uses budget, our whole pro forma had to get updated. It took us months, to get through that process, to evaluate and plan, and then cut costs anywhere that we really could. And then raise additional funding, back from, it was a hybrid of sources again, because we couldn't get it all from external sources, because that would have thrown off the whole balance. So we had to go back to our member owners and ask them for additional money, both through increasing our targeted number of member owners. At that point, we actually increased our goal from what was 1,200 to 1,350. And then work to raise additional tens of thousands of dollars in additional owner loans, as well as seeking other grants and sources to help, bridge those costs. We did raise all of that money. So it was in November that we were able to launch, phase 2 of construction, and signed our loans. And in addition to, at that point, we were working with Reinvestment Fund, and they have a partnership with PIDC, which is a local financial institution, and they came together to give us, a substantial loan. It's $320,000. We had to bring another large external funder to the table. I had a connection with Lease. We had talked, and then our board had talked with Lease in the past as well. And so we reached out to Lease and asked them if they would consider giving us an additional loan. And they agreed. They agreed to give us a $50,000 loan. So that helped us close the final gap, and kind of matched what our member owners were bringing to the table. And we were able to make it all work and get construction rolling again. So we did begin that construction in November and December as we were signing the loans and raising the last bits of capital that we needed to move forward. So I would say in that particular, one lesson learned from that particular phase would be that to wait to get your final construction budget again to that very end, last moment when you were supposed to be signing your loan was probably not an ideal situation. There are certainly some things that, played out. I mean, in the economy, we saw additional tariffs and additional, so there were other like economic changes that had been taking place over that like year and a half that impacted, our budget overall. But also there were some other things that could have been shored up, in assessing our overall costs that really helped us realize this. And then of course the delay, because we were paying rent as well. Those delays did cost us money, and we were able to recoup some of that from our landlord, but not as much as we should have, or we would like to. And we're still negotiating with them. So basically, construction started, and we were so ecstatic because we had overcome this huge hurdle, 2 rounds of capital campaigns. Later, we're moving along. We've got all of our final bids, for everything, construction, equipment, all of that. Everything's moving forward. We've got a timeline, and we were seeing some delays in the project, but not anything too substantial. And then the pandemic came, and we were supposed to be opening in the spring 2020. That was our promise to our community as we were raising that additional, those additional tens of thousands of dollars after they had been waiting for us to open the store and thought we were going to be opening the store in the fall last year. In the fall of 2019. So the pandemic happened. I think, the pandemic, our community gave us a lot of grace, with that, because obviously everything was stopped. Everybody was experiencing, the ramifications of the pandemic. And yet at the same time, the need that our community had for access to healthy food, the crowded grocery stores, the safety, the empty shelves, all of those issues were very much on the surface, for all of our communities, at that time when the pandemic first started. So, we really wanted to keep good to our promise to, open our store, but we couldn't physically open a brick and mortar store with our Governor Wolf, our state governor, or our Commonwealth governor, I should say, put a stop to construction. And that was for several months. So during that time, we had to regroup. We reassessed our financial position. We raised money. The SBA, came to the table for us for PPP and EIDL. We additionally had to raise additional money from our member owners, from our community. Leaf agreed to increase their $50,000 to $60,000. We found ways to bring in additional funding through like a program called Co-op Cash. We really diversified our sources and uses budget. And we also opened an online store. So the online store, what that was, we used the Square platform, which is, which is a platform that like restaurants and other kind of small shops will use to sell products online. We used it to operate basically a micro grocery store, kind of our version of a buying club, basically. So instead of having people go through like a UNFI catalog and pick whatever they wanted and order that, what we did was we offered a signature box. So it's staple food items that we called the SPFC Basics box. And it had, several pounds of pasta, some tomato products, some bulk items that kind of went together. So we really worked to plan like a meal, a week, 2 weeks of meals together that would be about $65. So, thinking about it being around the price of like a SNAP budget, like a food stamp budget, like trying to keep the cost down. And then we had volunteers. So we found a free location. We worked with Weaver's Way Co-op. Weaver's Way, one of our local co-ops here in Philly, actually acted as a distributor for us. And the reason why we needed to do that was because UNFI was going to give us the buying club prices, and those prices honestly were really high. And Weaver's Way was able to do it, and they were able to deliver to us on the day that we had the free space. And they were able to aggregate product from more than one source. So it really worked out to be just a wonderful thing, because Weaver's Way has a truck and they have multiple stores. So they have a warehouse. They were really able to help us out with this program. We also worked with a local produce cooperative that distributes from like 300 local farmers, called Lancaster Farm Fresh Co-op. And so they were bringing us produce boxes, like a CSA share box. So we were selling the basics box, the CSA share box, and then a selection of items that we were offering for our member owners and the broader community to buy off of the Square website. And, you know, through that program, we did about $55,000 in sales from May through November, which was really great. We didn't make a high margin off of it or whatever, but we were serving our community, we were keeping faith alive, and we were offsetting some of our operational overhead costs in the process. So we did that, and that, you know, became a platform for a lot of great work. We were able to donate hundreds of produce boxes, not produce box, basics boxes, to community members in need as well. People were buying them, and then we would turn around and donate those donated boxes that people were purchasing through the program. So we were doing that with all volunteers except myself until I was able to bring on our department leads, you know, just about 2 months before we opened the store. And it was all volunteer effort beyond that. So while that was all going on, we did that program from May 2020 through November 2020. In June, we were able to resume construction. We had to continue raising money. We weren't able to raise all of the money in those short months, but we were able to raise enough money to keep the cash flow going, and just had to keep moving along to raise the additional funds that we needed to get the store open. And the total project is about 1.6 million that we had to put into opening the store. So substantial increase from what was originally projected, the delays, the additional construction costs. And then we have had a couple contractor issues and an issue with our landlord, where our landlord actually owes us for the landlord work, many of the landlord work items still. And we had a glass installer that was supposed to do our entire storefront bail on us, and they owe us a substantial amount of money. So we had to find and hire somebody new to perform that work for us. And so that is all wrapped into that. So now we're working on recouping those additional funds. But we were able to get our store open and stocked. In November 2020, we started getting kind of the smaller equipment. So the larger equipment, everything was ordered before COVID. So that was a whole other thing that we had to deal with, was we had large refrigeration equipment now piling up that we weren't ready for in the store, that had to be stored. So it was a lot of negotiating and trying to get people to hold things. And we had to pay additional storage costs for certain things that we had that were even donated, which was really painful. But starting in October, November, we started getting the refrigeration equipment, and then we started getting the shelving in. We hired the department leads in October. We were able to hire our clerks in November, early December, gearing up towards our soft opening, which happened. This is a typo, soft opening. We planned to do a soft opening in November, but you know, things were continuing to take a long time. So we did open in December 2020, and we just did like the quietest grand opening that you could really imagine, with all of the publicity that you could pull out. And we got in the newspaper, we got on every TV channel. You can imagine, I'll send a list of all of these sources. It was pretty amazing how much fanfare we really got opening the store. And so we had to keep somebody outside, you know, monitoring the lines, because we're only able to have 12 people in the store at a time. And it was very busy, you know, at the beginning, and now it's kind of leveled out. People have kind of come up with their shopping routines, so it's not all at once. But we have 17 staff members. We're exceeding our sales projections. We're, our cash flow is decent. Everything is working out right now. We're wondering when that J curve is going to happen. It seems super unpredictable because nobody's ever opened a grocery store in this time. It's just such an interesting time to be doing this. So I guess I'll kind of see if there are any other questions about the timeline. And then one of the things I should mention too is that during this whole phase 3 capital campaign, raising all of the money from our member owners with additional loans was not really possible. We started the co-op cash program. Another thing that we did was our member owner equity was set at $200. We actually, in October 2020, had our general membership meeting and had a vote of our member owners. They voted with a very high percentage of support to increase our co-op equity from $200 to $300 so that we could have the capital that we need in order to open our store. And then we had to set a target of a minimum of 100 owners investing another $100 in order to kind of get that to come together. And it was a lot, right up to that last minute to make it all happen. Now we have 1,500 and I think 60 owners, which is really amazing. To think that our original goal was to have 1,325. We've already surpassed the goal of owners that we had for our whole next year now, in just our first couple months of opening. So yeah, all is going well, aside from all of the, cleanup stuff we have to do from opening in such a intense time.
So we have a whole bunch of questions about some of the pieces of the financing. What was the total cost of the whole project?
Yeah, so the total cost of the project was 1.6 million.
It was 1.6. And how much of that was raised from owners in the end?
So owners was about, I want to say it was nearly half of it. Let me kind of pause my share, and I'm gonna go back to here. Let me see if I can get to a place where I have like those answers for you. I should have put those in a slide.
Oh, that's all right.
There we go.
Again, I know that you found time to do this at all was probably a miracle. So we're good.
All right, here we go. Let me get this sources and uses budget up for us. Okay, so here's the end outcome. So
we're not seeing it.
You don't see it. Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of
okay, that's great. Okay.
Verbally tell you what we did. So our through benefits and donations, we raised $93,000. In grants, we raised $90,000. In member equity, we raised $273,000. And owner loans was $477,000. So so what we call equity, we also raised $54,000 in other sources, which that included the co-op cash program and our the sales that we were doing through our online store. It was over $1 million in sources from basically what we call our community. That includes the benefits and donations. So just keep in mind that $200,000 of that was coming from kind of like donations plus grants. And then the loans themselves, we had brought in what's $365,000 in city and community loans. The SBA gave us through the two programs about $51,000. We have like $54,000 in landlord contributions. I'm actually trying to recoup more there. And our free fill came out to what is approximately $50,000. The vendor credits, we really struggle with that. So that's one thing that I ended up like knocking our vendor credit budget down to $5,000 because I just wasn't able to, most of our substantial vendors were not willing to offer us terms unless we were able to bring a personal guarantee to the table. Now, some of our smaller local vendors, we had started working with them through the basics box in the online store. And given the time and the environment that we were opening, they were willing and kind of happy to have like somebody that was buying stuff from them, because a lot of them were selling to restaurants and other sources that were kind of drying up. So many of those local folks did give us terms, but not long terms, like a week or whatever. So we weren't really able to secure the terms that we wanted to get. And thankfully we kind of saw that coming. I had even also reduced our free fill because we were really having a lot of difficulties with navigating UNFI, and we had a change in our sales rep, like in the middle of the pandemic. So we had knocked that budget down to like $25,000, but we were able to get close to $50,000 from them in free fill and discounts. So that was really good. So yeah, overall, you know, the total budget about 1.6 million, and we raised about $1 million of that from our community, including our owners and the owners themselves. That total is $750,000
in owner loans.
In owner loans and equity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 750 total. Okay. So there was a request to read it down again. So I'm just gonna see if I got it right. Your sources were 93 was benefits and donations. 90K came from grants.
Yes.
The owner piece came to 750 total, which was 273 in equity and 477,000 in owner loans.
Yes.
About 54,000 was other. That was the co-op cash and online store mostly.
Mm-hmm.
365 in city and community loans, 365,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 54,000 landlord was supposed to pay in.
Mm-hmm.
And then 50,000 of free fill was what was actually found. And then you did get 5,000 in vendor credit.
Yeah, I got approximately 5,000 in vendor credit. Yep.
Okay. Which is actually about, in my mind, vendor credit, if you get it at all, is amazing if you're not an NCG. So I think that's pretty awesome. Okay, so I think we got all the sources correct. One question that came up earlier was this always the size that was planned, or did the plan shrink at some point because of what was available, whatever?
I mean, there was definitely originally talk of doing a larger space, but you know, because of this urban environment and this type of spaces that were really available in our community, this is what was picked. I wish I could go on more in detail about what was happening in that particular point in time, but because I wasn't directly involved, I kind of just heard that's what they were able to find after looking at these, you know, 100 plus sites, and this was the most suitable, you know, space that they were able to identify. The square footage and the space, we're on a residential street. Or it's a kind of a hybrid street. It's a very narrow street. It's a one-way street. It definitely bears some challenges. You know, visibility from like a bigger street. Like we are in such an urban center, but thankfully people seem to realize that we're here, and we're just going to have to keep, you know, getting the word out about it.
Excellent. I do want to mention, just for those listening startups, that the story of South Philly Food Co-op turns out to be pretty parallel to Dill Pickle Food Co-op in Chicago, in that there was a larger plan at first. There was lots of real estate challenges. There was just a decision that we couldn't wait any longer, and the real estate probably wasn't going to open up. Went for a smaller site with no parking, opened above sales projections. And you saw me stress it in the comments, and I keep stressing it. This works only in an intense urban density.
Yeah.
So, but it is a story that has now happened twice, and I suspect it'll be similar to Dill Pickle in that they'll have really outgrown their store within 2 to 3 years. But
that's what we hope for. That's what I hope for.
There was questions like, okay, so we got a bunch of other questions. Want to say, are you guys messing with the idea of delivery, online ordering, continuing now the store's open?
We do actually. So we are continuing. So during the online store program, we initially started off with our own homegrown delivery service. We found a delivery service called Block, which was doing deliveries for Weaver's Way, and they're connected. They have kind of a parent company that does these electric bikes that you can rent around town. A lot of cities have these bicycle staples where you can go and get a bicycle and ride it around in super urban areas. So these blue bikes They have that. They started a spin-off company for delivery. It's all electric powered bicycles with a nice little cargo back that's insulated. So they started doing our deliveries for the basics box. And then we brought them on to do our grocery deliveries. Our delivery program, so they have their own, it's a Shopify. So it's very homegrown, not super different from what we were doing before. So we offer a selection of like 200 products currently. We want to grow the offerings on the website, but they have their own Shopify platform. They sell the products, and then come in and do the shopping and delivery for us. So it's kind of like Instacart, but it's more local. It's more local in that their values are much more in alignment with ours. It is a bigger company than, it's a smaller company than Instacart, but it has a more homegrown feel, and it feels more in alignment with our values because they're doing the bicycle delivery, which also really works for us. Being in an urban environment, driving, just parking by the store, parking to make a delivery, it's incredibly inconvenient and difficult. And so they're able to do it pretty quickly. They get in and do their shops and then get out and deliver them to our customers. It's twice a week. So we're doing them on Mondays and Thursdays now. So we originally had them doing it on Wednesdays, and that was when we get our major UNFI delivery. We quickly realized that wasn't going to work. And so we migrated over. So now they're doing it basically the day after. And we originally opened with one UNFI delivery too, which was awful. It was incredibly awful for us. Terrible. And, I had told them what our sales projections were, and they still weren't willing to do it. And I said, so we just kept on them. And so they did, quickly agree to migrate over to twice a week, which has made a huge difference for us because we have almost no refrigerated backstock. Like our backstock area is teeny tiny. And so it posed a lot of challenges for us.
Yep. Sounds very much like difficult. And so what is an average sales week for you guys right now?
So our sales right now, we're running around 56,000 each week on average.
Okay, cool. All right. And if you don't have parking, how are you handling things like shopping cart? Is there any curbside? Are you guys able to do curbside, anything like that?
We will do a curbside carry out for people, like if they do the shop, and then we'll carry it out to their car for them. Most of our customers are actually walking or biking, into the store. There is some parking, like there's a public school that's not currently open that provides us some opportunities. We have an application in for a loading zone. Our city is moving incredibly slow on all of these kinds of proposals. So we have a loading zone application in. So that'll be 3 spots right in front of our store that should be rotating over at minimum every 30 minutes. So that will help us as well. So right now it's definitely, the parking situation is a major challenge for us because there's an apartment complex upstairs from us that has 8 units. And so there will be days where the cars that are currently in front of the space do not move at all.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I actually did have a question. I was surprised to hear this. Basket size? Do you happen to know your average basket?
Oh, I want to say, I think it's $24. Let me take a look. I think it's 24.
Okay, which is pretty good. So the reason that question comes up is, of course, I just want to stress again, I'm the one who's going to be harping on this. This is an urban environment. The fact that people walking and biking and that's a lot of their customer base, that is not going to be true for anyone who is not in this kind of urban density. I know it's the fantasy. It is not the reality for anyone without this kind of urban density. But it's why you're seeing about $24 basket is good, actually, for a store with no parking. And I think, again, that speaks to the urban environment. But, it is lower than national average. And that's to be expected because it's kind of being used, I would assume, Lori, is kind of a community, like a neighborhood grocery store. Like people are, coming by and getting a few things. And
yeah. In our shopping carts, we have 10 of them. It's the little ones, you know, the little ones that are basically enough that would carry about 3 bags of groceries in them. So our space is so small that it's those double-decker ones. You can't have a regular shopping cart in our store and actually navigate the space. And so we have like the little arrows on the floor that show folks how to navigate the store. Now, if when it's slower, like they don't really have to observe that, but when it is, you know, busier, then they have to observe the flow because there's just not enough space to navigate the store without doing that.
I have a bunch of questions here about the national average basket size, which Lori, I don't know if you're actually in Cocoa Fist yet to know that. Last I knew, it's averaging around 30 to 32. That's what, but again, that's averaging in giant stores with huge parking lots and little tiny stores and stores with delis, which have lower baskets, usually to stores without delis. So that number doesn't really tell you anything. So all asking, it still needs to be customized to your store. That national average doesn't mean a lot when we're averaging in stores that are just wildly different with and without delis and so forth. So on that front, you guys do not have a kitchen, any kind of prepared foods. Do you have some kind of solution to that, or?
Yeah, so, well, we did have a solution to it, and we do have a solution, but it didn't pan out. So we have, we don't have a deli prep area. We're way too small to do that. Like, we wouldn't have the economy of scale to really warrant having somebody back there making food just for us. I don't think, I feel like I've heard that that's more like 5,000 square feet or whatever, where it kind of like hits over to being effective to do that. So what we have a 6-foot grab and go case. That's a combination of like ready to drink items and like prepared food items. And we actually had a major problem with our refrigeration vendor, and they delivered a case. It was the wrong size. They delivered it a couple days before we opened. It didn't have the whole thing was botched. The guy who sold it to us went out of town to the Poconos. Anyway, long story short, we are still dealing with the fact that we do not have this refrigerated case, and they're now slated to come pick it up this weekend after I've been harassing them. Yeah, so we don't have that case. So right now we just have a little bit of, you know, those kind of items. In our regular case, we kind of eked out some space because we know that our community needs that. So we cut certain other items. And the worst thing is that we had everything on order because it was all expected to be here. So yeah, anyway, so we will be having a 6-foot grab and go deli case. We will have hot coffee and tea. That whole section is currently like still actually under construction due to this incorrect case being delivered, which caused a complete upheaval in that specific area of the store. But we will have that, and we have local folks here in the community, you know, other folks that like have, you know, kitchens or have access to a commissary kitchen that make prepared foods that will be bringing those items in for us. And we have somebody that does sushi that wants to actually prepare sushi for us as well, which will be nice. So we have plans, and we now just need to get that new case installed and delivered and functioning to reinitiate those plans. And I think it is going to go well because we definitely have, we're close to, like, the high school is right across the street from us. So we have a lot of teachers. We're also close to a health plaza that a lot of folks come to get, you know, they go to work there. So they're going to be walking around. And so everybody's always looking for something new to eat.
Yes, very much so. And so, what's it say? So if I'm doing the math right, if you guys are around 56 a week, you're looking at, you could easily hit 3 million this year in sales for your first.
I messed up on the sales total. I'm sorry. It's 56 a day average. Sorry, I messed up. So yeah, 5,600 a day. So our average sales are currently, I just went back and looked at my spreadsheet. I said that it's actually more around 40,000 a week average. So it is good though. That's
over 2 million for a size store that size. That's
yes.
So yeah, some of our startups right now are opening 7,000 square foot stores that are supposed to do 2.3 to 2.5 their first year. So you guys are not, there's nothing shabby there.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we're definitely, you know, doing really well.
Yeah. And people were discussing kind of the tiny deli thing. I'll just say this real quick. We are wrapping up, and I don't want to spend time on this part, but yes, we do see some co-ops that are 4,000 square feet or even 3,500 that have teeny tiny little kitchen spaces My co-op had one, teeny tiny postage stamp kitchen, and able to put out a few things that can work. You have to have enough demand for it to work, and you have to focus on just a few things. It sounds like you guys are already planning a hot coffee, hot tea, things like, the ability to heat up, soups and stuff may be a little beyond your guys' reach. I don't know where you're thinking, but yes, it can work in small stores. If you're like, but we're going to be 4,000 square feet and we thought we'd have a tiny deli, it can work. It's a different conversation. It was not the right choice when South Philly made their decisions. They decided it wasn't the right choice for them. It is pretty borderline. If you're under 6,000 square feet in retail, whether deli will work for you, you have to have the right audience to make that work. So, they made a judgment call. It's a tough one.
Yeah, we did in New Orleans. We had like a salad bar. We had hot soup and a salad bar, and then we made sandwiches, and those were all, and like some cold salads to go. That was really it. That seemed to work, but it was pretty limited. Here, it just we really don't have the space to dedicate to the prep area, unfortunately. And then again, the sales volume. I just don't think we would. At some point we will hit that, and I look forward to that day. But I just don't think that we really had the space, the layout, nor the sales projections. Our sales projections, are 1.4 million. We're clearly on track to exceed that, but with those sales projections, it really just doesn't warrant making that big jump for that deli, for a deli department. So we held off. And, hopefully we're going to continue to exceed our goals, and we can be the next Dill Pickle because we've been looking up to them for a very long time.
Well, and I think you made the right judgment call. The thing is that to those folks who are like, but there's demand. The thing is that deli is you can be selling so much food, as I'm sure Lori can also tell you, and still be losing a ton of money in deli. So it's a tough spot. We have two questions I don't want to miss getting to real quick. Are you guys talking to NCG? Are you looking at joining NCG?
We did apply originally to NCG. We didn't make the cut. Last go round, it was it was the year that we were supposed to open. It was at the very beginning. We had applied in January with hoping to open the store in that fall. And there were other applicants that were stronger than us that were able to get in. So we're now, looking at, we're planning on talking with Terry Bulling about joining NCG. It's definitely on the radar. It's definitely something that I think would greatly benefit us. I think that would put us in a much stronger position. We have the benefit here in Philly of having like an amazing network of cooperatives. So we get that side of the benefit of NCG in a certain way, but there's so much more to the benefits of NCG. And our volume discounts are very small. And so, that affects our pricing. And frankly, that's such an important thing to our community, even though that's not the number one reason that they say you should be joining NCG, it really does make a difference. And I think that, it's something that we need to continue to go for and work towards.
All right, the last one, and I know they all want to know about this one. Tell us about Co-op Cash. What was that?
Co-op Cash. Okay, so Co-op Cash, basically what Co-op Cash is, it's kind of it's a way to purchase credit in the store. And so our member owners and community members were able to go online on our website. We use Nation Builder, which is like a combination website and a member owner database. And they would go online, and some of them also sent checks to purchase a couple $100, some even as much as like $1,000 in kind of a virtual gift card that they could use in the store. But we told them that they couldn't use it until April 1st. So the idea is this is a way for us to offset the fact that we knew we weren't going to be getting vendor terms and that we were going to need a little bit more cash at first when we first opened. And so we asked our member owners to invest Co-op Cash in us so that we can get through kind of this initial phase, get all of our funding from our loans paid out and all of that good stuff. So they bought them. We basically have it all electronically. And so what will happen is once we hit April 1st, credit will show up on their member account at the point of sale. they will give us their member number, they'll show us their ID, and then they will be able to use, their co-op cash, which is basically like a virtual gift card that's in their name at the register until it's gone. So we did get, I think it was about $8,000 through the co-op cash program. So that was helpful, to us. And it was a great way that folks felt really happy to be able to contribute in that way.
And I want to stress, because Lori knows this, she said she did it to offset the vendor credit. I want you guys to hear that, because a lot of startups think, oh, we'll do this. I'm like, and you will owe it back very, very, very quickly. So that still has to show on your pro forma as cash that's going to go right out as soon as you allow people to use them.
Right.
So it's like a short-term loan, which is exactly like vendor credit. So Lori just did a brilliant job of switching that, knowing it would behave just like vendor credit. But
vendor credit's better, because when they give you terms that last and they keep doing it, it's more perpetual. So you can't, like, that source is so short term. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had to budget for it. It's going to come in and then it's going to be out. So it's, at one point, we had folks that thought that was going to be the way that we were going to save this, ship. And it was like, no, well, actually, this is a much smaller portion, because we're going to owe that back, and we're not going to recoup it. Some people may hold on to theirs for some time, but probably the vast majority of folks are actually going to use their co-op cash, sometime between April and August, and then that cash will be out the door. So
although we also know that that sticky truth, which is at least 10% of it probably won't get redeemed, and will get kept. But okay, we are at the top of the hour. I'm bringing that up because I don't think Lori has more than an hour to share with us. So I want to take the moment to thank her for her time that she came out and did. This is just amazing. So we can give her a round of applause, thumbs up. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank you.
We're deeply appreciative. If anyone wants to stay and ask some questions about what you heard, so forth, that's fine. If Lori can stay, it's great. I don't know that she can. I'm going to stop recording at this moment, and